So do we have beef right now, or are we gonna have beef?
Am I just hitting the present button?
Yeah, he wants to be on that.
Do you need the keyboard too?
Oops. What do we got going here? Wait, I just need the keyboard then. Yeah, so How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Just got finished with it last night. So kind of skimmed through the last couple chapters, but it's all right. Part one takeaway. I'm just going to go through the 4 parts. There's 4 parts in this book. Each part has multiple chapters within itself. The part 1 is the fundamental techniques in handling people. He talks a lot about how criticizing is very detrimental when it comes to trying to win friends and win people over. He talks a lot about striving to be understanding and forgiving. He also talks more about the appreciation value and how it's undervalued. A lot of people don't actually give appreciation. They don't say it out loud. They kind of just keep it within yourself. They kind of keep it internal, and making sure that you give that appreciation and that it's understood that either the person you're talking to or whoever it may be understands that you are appreciating what they're saying. And most of the time, actually, when people split from relationships, it is actually because of the lack of expressed appreciation. And another thing he talks about in part 1 is the idea of stepping into other people's shoes is one of the most important things you can do. So moving on to part 2, he talks about several ways to make people like you. And he starts out with kind of talking more about being genuinely interested in other people, and always making sure you're greeting people with enthusiasm and animation, kind of setting that tone for the conversation. And that kind of coincides with smiling. He really emphasizes the importance of smiling, because that kind of sets the tone for a conversation. If you go into a conversation with someone and you're not smiling or you're not looking, presentable, you're automatically giving kind of a bad vibe at the start of the conversation. So he really touches on the smiling part. And that kind of covers that. And then another thing he talks about is kind of being a good listener rather than being a good talker. Because good listening if you're a good listener, it's much easier to be a good talker, because you understand what kind of the conversation is about and where the person you're having conversation with is coming from. So being a good talker is good and all, but it really stems from being a good listener. And then, I encourage people to talk about themselves as much as you can. He mentions that because, if you're talking about yourself in a conversation, it's, you're kind of more interested in the conversation. You're more inclined to talk more and have a good conversation when you're talking about yourself. Part 3, he talks about how to win people to your way of thinking. In this part of the book, he really emphasizes the avoidance of arguments. He says that when you enter into an argument with someone, it's kind of a lose-lose situation, even if you win, because when you argue with someone and it comes to the conclusion that you win, they end up feeling inferior and they feel worse about themselves coming into the conversation. So he emphasizes trying to avoid arguments whenever possible. And that it kind of coincides with one of the easiest ways to make an enemy is to say you're wrong. This just automatically kind of breaks people down and, sets a very bad tone of the conversation. And allowing people to express themselves at length will turn to make them feel more important and more sympathetic towards you. So part 4, he talks about how to change people without giving offense. And this kind of comes with part 3. It's before faulting people or blaming people. Begin with that honest appreciation and understanding. And then he also talks more about using the word but, or try not to use the word but rather use the word and. Because saying the word but in a conversation is automatically kind of brings a negative connotation to it. It automatically kind of says that if you say but, that kind of gives the person you have a conversation with, it kind of makes them automatically feel like they're wrong or they're doing something wrong. And then that kind of coincides with the last bullet point I have here where it says to understand and recognize your own mistakes before pointing out other people's mistakes. So in doing this, if you're understanding your own mistakes and recognizing those, it'll in turn make the person you're having a conversation with feel more sympathetic towards you and kind of more understanding towards you. If I had to give this book a rating, it would for sure be a 5-star. Just because I think a lot of these things that Dale mentions in this book are often overlooked and just kind of thought as kind of being a no-brainer. But until you actually take the time to think about it and get into the details of it, you really realize how important some things are. Who and why would I recommend this book? I would recommend this book to everyone, but especially to people who might be struggling or have a hard time with really connecting with people or not getting along with people. I think this book does a tremendous job in emphasizing those points in how to win those people over and gaining friends easily.
Awesome.
And that is all I got for that.
Very
Cool.
cool.
Right on.
Do you have a physical copy of the book? Or
I do. Yeah. Yep. It's a really old version.
There's a copy on Dropbox.
Yeah. There's also
I
a
looked it
audio
up,
version.
291 pages.
Yeah, something high twos.
Yeah.
I've been listening to it. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
are you done?
No, not
Yeah,
yet.
I'd like to
I'm on
read it.
part 4. It's
It's
awesome.
really good.
Cool.
I'm gonna have to do the next one.
I know a bunch of people that have read it.
Yeah.
I
Light
get
me
the
over.
last two.
That's how you do it.
Does anybody else need to present today, or is that it?
Those methods are also a great way for picking up chicks.
Perfect. That's all I need.
Do we get that? Do we get that in the recording?
That did go in the recording.